ago, 169 years ago, Tunnerminnerwait and Maulboyheener, two Indigenous men from Tasmania, were hung on this very spot. They were hung for the very reason that people on the 25th of April gather in their thousands across this nation to honour those Australians who have fought to maintain this country. These men were hung for the very same reason. They were executed publicly before a quarter of Victoria's population for having the audacity to be involved in armed struggle against the colonisers. They were the last survivors of a proud people in Tasmania who lost the 33-year war which commenced in 1803, which saw the population of Tasmania reduced from about 15,000 down to 82 by 1835. And of those 82, 16 were brought across to Victoria to civilise the Victorian blacks. And within 12 months, everybody forgot about them. They were left to their own devices. So 5 of them, Tunnerminnerwait, Planobeena, Pyterrunner, Maulboyheener and Trucannini, took to the bush. They knew how the whites, the colonisers, conducted warfare. They were involved in a 7-week war, 2 men and 3 women, which saw many of the colonisers in the Mornington Peninsula, the Dandenong Ranges, the Dandenongs, flee back to Melbourne. It was a struggle which was conducted with compassion. They burnt down homesteads, but before they burnt down the homesteads, took guns and food, they released the women and children. And the only 2 people who died in this affair were 2 whalers who were caught in the crossfire. 7 weeks after they began their struggle, they were captured. They were brought to Melbourne and they were tried. The 2 men, Tunnerminnerwait and Maulboyheener, were found guilty, and the 3 women were found innocent. And the 3 women were released back into the care of George Augustus Robinson, who was the Aboriginal detective who brought them across from Tasmania. They were brought here a few weeks later and hung as an example. In June, 5 months later, 3 European bushrangers were hung on this spot. And on the 5th of September 1842, a man called Roger, an Indigenous man called Roger from Port Fairy, was also publicly executed on this spot. And they were taken down the road and buried under where the Queen Victoria Market is, where I hope you will come with us later on. So why are we here today? We're not here just to recognise the past. The Tunnerminnerwait and Maulboyheener Commemoration Committee has a number of objectives. 1, it's to hold a yearly commemoration on the 25th of January at the site the execution took place, and that's what's happening now. 2, we want to publicly acknowledge the injustice of what happened in January 1842. Men and women who fought for their homes, their land, their freedom, executed on this soil, while on the 25th of April, we celebrate the same sacrifice. Thirdly, we want to highlight, this is not just a historical reenactment, this is a political act that we are making. We want to highlight the unfinished business that still exists between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians. It is not over. There's no treaty. There's no acknowledgement of the past. There's no compensation. It is not over. This act of ours is to highlight that. And fourthly, we are working towards the establishment of a significant public monument to publicly acknowledge what happened on that fateful day. If you walk around this city, there are millions of monuments to European colonisers. Every street in the central city is named after, and many of the people who were involved in this travesty have streets named after them in the city. But there are no significant public monuments. And those of you who remember back to 2006, because we tend to forget our history, will remember that some of the Indigenous activists who are here today who will be speaking were hounded, condemned, denigrated, assaulted because they had the audacity to occupy a corner of King's Domain during the Commonwealth Games to highlight that dispossession. So this is a political act. This is no historical reenactment. Now, first of all, I'd like to call on Sharon Fibrace to speak. She's a well-known Indigenous activist here in Victoria. She has a long pedigree of activism, and I wouldn't cross her.